Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study through the entire Bible. Currently, we are in Proverbs chapter 20. So let's get to it. There's a lot of good Proverbs. As I said before, Proverbs is uh, wisdom that we could take home with us, we can put in our lives, you know. Uh, um, Everyday, sensible knowledge, application of knowledge. So, verse 1 says, wine is a mocker, beer is a brawler. Whoever staggers because of them is not wise. Now, what is interesting about the term wine and beer, notice how many times you've been in a bar and you've seen where people who drunk too much beer, right, is a brawler. Now, there is a debate, a misapplication by men who says that it is a sin to drink wine. There is no such command. Jesus drank wine. I mean, Jesus drank wine so much that even people called him a drunkard. He wasn't a drunkard, but they just like, dude drinks wine. So when religious people say that it is a sin to drink wine, they are misrepresenting Scripture. What is commanded is not to be drunk with wine, not to be controlled, be addicted. Okay, that is the command. So wine is a mocker, beer is a brawler. And I'm not saying this, let me just say this. I don't drink. I've never drunk, never liked the taste of wine, beer, or the harder stuff. I could not get past the taste. Okay, so I'm not saying this because I drink. I don't. I'm saying this because, again, this accurately portrays Scripture. So again, wine is a mocker, beer is a brawler, and whoever staggers because of them is not wise, or being a drunkard. Now, I think many people who have been inebriated can certainly attest to that. We can even throw in driving, DUIs, okay? Because again, it gets even worse with DUIs, right? Drunk driving, accidents, killings. Verse 2, a king's terrible wrath is like a roaring of a lion. Anyone who provokes him endangers himself. Now, again, this is one of these that is true if you live under a dictatorship. We in America do not. We could curse the president. We could insult the president, and our Constitution protects us. Now, what could happen under the table, as it were, they could try to trump up charges or find things against you. But just face value, you are protected. However, when kings back then when you would have kings who would, that got that kind of power that could order your execution at the drop of a dime, a king's terrible wrath like a roaring of a lion, anyone who provokes him endangers himself. Verse 3, it is honorable for a man to resolve a dispute, but any fool can get himself into a quarrel. Now, this is something that if you stop and you think about something now, he says, an honorable man resolve disputes. Now, later, when you read in scripture, like in Matthew, the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers. The idea is that as a believer, as a child of God, one of the characteristics is to seek first to resolve disputes. But notice what he says, any fool can get into a quarrel. And sometimes that foolishness can cause you hurt. You um, you could um, you end up getting You can make matters worse. That's the point. Um, on the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus makes this statement: better to, I'm paraphrasing, resolve a matter before it gets to court. Because the issue is that if it goes to court, it could be worse for you. We kind of solve this, and this too could apply to the news agent that just settled for almost $1 billion. They now they settled for under $1 billion. Had they gone to court, it would have been over $1 billion, close to $2 billion. Now they're not honorable because they were foolish to get there in the first place. Now I'm not counting the greed factor, because truthfully, they probably don't care about that, spending that kind of money, because they've made so much money. That's why they would risk that. But anyway, I digress. But on our level, a lot of times, resolving a dispute is always better. It is honorable for a man to resolve a dispute, but any fool can get himself into a quarrel. Verse 4: the slacker does not plow during planting season. At harvest time he looks, and there is nothing. Now, of course, most of what you see back there is an agrarian nation, an agrarian society. It was important to plant and sow and reap at the right time. Notice what he says: a slacker. Now, how can we put this? A student who does not do their homework, and they fall behind in their grades. A worker who does not turn in reports on time, who does not complete job assignments on time. So all of that can have an effect here. All comes down to what? Slacker. Now, the use of the word slacker means that he just, I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get to it. Instead of, you know what? Let me do this first. Let me do this first. Let me get my work out of the way first. All right. Verse 5: counsel in a man's heart is deep water, but a man of understanding draws it out. So counsel in a man's heart is deep waters, but a man of understanding will draw it out. Now, there's a couple of ways of looking at that, right? A man's own heart, or people who can go to a person with that understanding and get that counsel drawn out from a man's heart. Verse 6: many a man proclaims his own loyalty, but who can find a trustworthy man? And that's to a person, a leader, a boss, a trustworthy man, a trustworthy man. And you should always be that trustworthy person. That's value. Now, it doesn't always work, but it certainly is value. I say that because sometimes, let me just say this. If you're in a company or a church and you see children, they're going to get promoted over you. Just saying. Okay? Verse, verse 7. By the way, and your trustworthiness, your loyalty has nothing to do with it. That's why, again, wisdom will tell you, if I was to go to a church, and let's say if I wanted to rise up the ranks, I don't have that desire now to rise up the ranks, because I've seen that side of it. But if I wanted to rise up the ranks, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing for you to want to grow in your church. In fact, I think it's a good thing. It goes back to who can find a trustworthy man. If you're that trustworthy man, then that leader should put his trust in you. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. That's why I say if you see children, they're going to make way for that children over a trustworthy man. But I digress from the verse of the scripture itself. Verse 7: the one who lives with integrity is righteous. his children who come after him will be happy. He said, a king sitting on a throne to judge, sifts out all evils with his eyes. Happy are you if you find a judge like that. Verse 9, who can say, I have kept my heart pure, I am cleansed from my sin. Now this is kind of something, in a sense, unusual that Solomon has been dealing with in terms of the book of Proverbs itself. The statement, nevertheless, is true. Can you say, truthfully, honestly before God, I have kept my heart pure and I am cleansed from my sins? Now, the only way you could answer that is to answer that under God's light, God's spotlight, not under your own. The only way you can answer this is to say, let me have God's light. All right? That's the only way you could honestly answer that question. Verse 10, differing weights in various measures, both are detestable to the Lord. Now, we saw this before. The balancing of scales. Some of you, I haven't seen a lot of them today in supermarkets, but they used to. I mean, if you go to the fruits and vegetables, they would have these scales. These big round things that almost look like clocks, but they were actually scales. So you take your bag of oranges and you put them in there, and you would see it's a pound. Well, if you are dishonest, you would try to rig the scale so that in your favor. That's what he's talking about. Doing stuff like that. It's God. He said it's detestable to the Lord. To be fair, give fair rates. Now, we used to also see that there used to be question with some gas stations. Like, for example, and this is going way back, but if gas was $1 a gallon, were you getting actually a gallon of gas? And there were those who were slick enough to be able to, and most people didn't check. The only way you could check that is to get a gallon and then see if you were $1 and then where you getting a gallon. And there were those that knew how to cheat, and they would cheat people. I would go in supermarkets. I remember going in supermarkets, and certain store owners would cheat you a couple of pennies, just a couple of pennies, 3 pennies. Like I said, I'm going back. But if you do that over a period of time from their perspective, yes, it was worth it for them. I didn't care if it was 2 pennies. I didn't pay attention to it. All right. Verse 11. Even a young man is known by his actions, if his behavior is pure and upright. Now that's true. Your actions will always testify of your works. Your action will always testify. Verse 12, the hearing, well, let me put it, your actions will always testify whether they're good or whether they're evil, whether they're bad. People know that's a good child. People also know that's a bad child. Verse 12, the hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord made them both. The Lord made them both. Verse 13, don't love sleep or you will become poor. Open your eyes and you'll have enough to eat. Now again, it goes to being lazy, right? You see a person that's sleeping till 11 o'clock. Why? On a Tuesday, right? 11 o'clock on a Tuesday. Why? Unless he's working midnights. All right. Don't love sleep. Verse 14. By the way, this was written in a time. Let me just say this. This term here, "don't love sleep," was written in a time where you didn't have a lot of midnight shift. There were some, believe it or not, like shepherds watch. You remember the shepherds would watch, but the idea again being that in agrarian society, you work from sun up to sundown. So to oversleep, you was wasting the day of the work you could do in the fields. Ours is different because, like you say, we have 24-hour shifts now. So even with that, don't oversleep the time that you're supposed to get up and be at work. Don't oversleep, okay? Don't oversleep the time that you're supposed to be at a meeting. Okay, verse 14. It is worthless. It is worthless, the buyer says, but after he is on his way, he gloats. Now that is true. I can tell you right now, sometimes it's irritating to me. I often tell people, like one time I manage uh, contracts and stuff, and sometimes you have to take bids. And whenever the guys, people would show up and they'd be like, "Oh my God, look at all the work we have to do. Oh, so much work." I'm like, "Look, just either you're gonna bid for it or you're not gonna bid for it." But everything is worthless, worthless. But then when he's saying that to bring his price down, but then it says when he's on his way, he gloats. Verse 15. There is gold in a multitude of jewels, but knowledge, with knowledgeable lips, are a rare treasure. You're gonna. What is always interesting that a person can have all the jewels they want. Verse 16. Take his garment, for he has put up security for a stranger. Get collateral if it is for foreigners. Now we talked about co-signing when he said put up security for a stranger. We talked about the idea that the Bible never commands you not to co-sign for someone. What Proverbs here is advising is don't co-sign for a stranger, someone you don't know. That's the first thing. Don't co-sign for someone you don't know. Yeah, in other words, that's just plain stupid when you co-sign. So co-sign means you become security for their debt. That's stupid. People have done that, and I've seen people default on that. Why? Because well, they don't lose anything. In a sense, they do lose because their credit, yeah, is damaged. But immediately, the creditors will come after the person who co-signed, and they will usually do it by going to court. Next thing you know, you're getting a wage assignment. They won't even give you the decency to say, look, this person that you co-signed for is defaulting. Are you going to now pay? They just go to court. That's why it says that. The second thing is don't co-sign for someone because you don't know what the future will the outcome of the future. Yeah, you co-sign for somebody today and something happens where they lose their job. Hmm? They lose their job, they get sick, they can't work, and now they can't pay their bills. The idea is that co-signing is wrong. Okay? That's why it says in verse 16 again, take his garment, for he has put up security for a stranger. Get collateral if it is for foreigners. So the idea is that if you're foolish enough to be the cosign, um, I like the wisdom of one person uh, that I knew. She said if I ever decide to, and she basically wasn't going to co-sign for anyone. But she said, but if I ever do, then I would first and foremost put that money up. So if I'm going to, co-sign $20,000 for a car, I'm going to put that $20,000 in the bank, so that if you do, I can just pay it off. One of the biggest wise thing is don't co-sign at all. That's the wisdom. Now sometimes we do it for family members and things like that, but you know. All right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comments section below. All comments are welcome. See you in the next study.